Do the Saints know their right from their left tackle? Saturday, we got our first chance to see real football. Even though it's just the rookies, it was still a chance to be out there, put our feet in the mud and see what was happening. But one thing that really stood out is that first-round pick, Taliese Fuaga, was playing at left tackle when he played at right his entire time during college. So a lot of people had a lot of reactions, but what do we think about Tally playing at left?
I don't know who should go first because I'm going to be the skeptic of the two. Obviously, I think it's fine. We see it all the time. We see, the best tackles in the league. Penei Sewell has played right and left. Tristan Wirfs moved to left last year. But even Tristan Wirfs, I found this article. He had to hire a team psychologist a sports psychologist to work with him. And he said he was having breakdowns about switching. He said he couldn't sit there with the thoughts anymore. He felt like he was setting himself up for failure. He was in a really rough spot mentally. He was really nervous. He went on and he had a great season at left tackle. We see guys do it all the time. I don't see why bother. I don't see why bother. I understand left tackle is still slightly more important than right tackle. If he makes a smooth transition to left tackle, great. Put him at the more important position. But I just figure this guy is the centerpiece of this offensive line they're rebuilding. Why do it at all? I am a little skeptical.
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer is that you weren't your best player at left tackle. He's probably going to be their best offensive lineman. Yeah. If he can do it, you get him at the position where you have the most value, and he's the best at it. You can't, like, if you got to go out there and you have a good guy and you can have a mid guy and you can say, and you got a right-handed quarterback. Mm-hmm. Do you want the good guy at left and the mid guy at right? Absolutely, every single time, because if the pressure's coming at Carr can do something to protect himself. If you got a mid guy behind him who can't block and Derek's getting lit up from the back every single time, that's affecting every single throw he has, every single time he drops back. He's speeding himself up when he doesn't need to speed himself up. So I think if you can go out there and you can get Fuaga on the left side, great. But here's the thing. You can start this right now, and there's 9 OTA practices,
yes, of course.
3 mini camp practices,
part of this,
3 rookie camp practices. So you have 15 practices to evaluate it. And at the end of it, if it doesn't work, just flip it back. Yeah. And it's really no harm done. These 15 practices, like the people that just want to hate Dennis Allen are going to be like, oh my God, you set him back.
Right.
No, you didn't. It's 15 practices. He's still learning the language of the offense. He's still getting to know the playbook, and he can just go back to playing right tackle at the end of it. But I don't think you should make and then the second factor of this is Trevor Penning. And I don't think, the argument that I keep seeing on Twitter is like, well, then it's going to be harder for Penning. Who gives a damn?
Yeah.
Like Trevor Penning, if you are making any plans around Trevor Penning at this point, like I think that's the bigger mistake. I think the bigger mistake here would be, well, let's not try anything. Like I think any job that anybody has, like if you can look at us and you're like, well, let me see if this guy can handle it. Like I think that's a good thing to do before you start looking for the outside. So I think it's fine. I think you try it out. You see if you can do it. And if you can't, you just flip it back. And it's not the end of the world. I think the more insane thing would be just like, well, let's not find out what he can do at all.
No, I get it. And I was, like I said, I almost wanted to go second because I was just trying to be the voice of caution that like it kind of surprised me. But there is no harm whatsoever in doing this during rookie minicamp. And Clint Kubiak and Dennis Allen both said, we're going to reevaluate after rookie minicamp. They will probably give him several weeks on the job, and they will reevaluate after that. But they're going to ultimately do where he feels most comfortable. They're not going to set this guy up to fail. He's an incredibly valuable resource, and he means a lot to them. And everyone thought he could do it. He thought he could do it on draft day. Jim Nagy, the guy who scouted him for the Senior Bowl and then had him all week, said, I see a left tackle in him. And like I said, this is not a Dennis Allen thing. It's not a Clint Kubiak thing. This is what teams do all around the league. Like, even though players admit they struggle with it, teams try it all the time. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, Andrew Speed obviously comes to mind here. He simply could not get over the hump, could not move to right tackle. And after they tried him for a while, they moved him to left guard, and he ended up making a successful transition there. But yeah, of course, you try to find out. And that's what May football is all about, is trying to find out. I mean, I guess I believe in left tackle. I mean, the blind side is an expression for a good reason. You're protecting the quarterback's backside. But I just think, I mean, we've been taught so many times, especially in the Ryan Ramczyk era of Saints football, that the top pass rushers in the league go over to the other side so often too that I don't think it's that important. So I guess my final takeaway would be, if it sets him back at all, if he's uncomfortable doing it at all, I think the Saints will move him back to right tackle. I think they should, but I absolutely do see no harm in finding out if he's the kind of guy who could do both and either.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of y'all. You know, muscle memory has him at right tackle, but if you're allowed to have the versatility to learn how to play left and right, you're indisposable at that point.
It's only better, yeah.
But yeah, look, my thing on Ramczyk would be just that they had a high value left tackle the whole entire time.
Right.
He was here.
They might have moved him too.
He never had a path to left tackle, and then by the time they were shaky at left tackle, his knee was going, and you want your faster guy on the left side. The other thing is that like I think it just look, I mean, there's no doubt about it that being better on the left side is better for a right-handed quarterback, especially one that doesn't handle pressure well already. That's already rattled by it. So I think you want to do that. I will say this though, like if you go back, like I thought the knock on Fuaga for me when I watched him is I personally thought he was right tackle only. Like he just doesn't have the length. He just kind of plays like plug and play at that spot. I thought he could maybe move inside. I didn't necessarily see left, but I could absolutely be wrong. I don't think enough of my opinion to sit here and be like, what they're doing is insane. So if he has a chance to do it, I think you gotta find it out. So look, the other part of this too that I think has value to it, he could play left tackle this year, and it doesn't mean he has to be your left tackle for the next 25 years. Like,
right.
I think if you next 25 years, the next 5 years, if for the next 10 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you put him there, you can move him back to right next year. If that's his better position, you get a different left tackle. And now if that left tackle ever gets hurt, you can take your right tackle and move him over to the left and cover the most important position on your offensive line if you need to. He has that flexibility then. I just think that I just don't really see a lot of downsides, and I don't think it sets him back really at all. Like, whatever your best five is, I think you have to do the things you have to do to get those guys out there. And if that is him on the left side and Uli Udo on the right, I feel better about it. If you're telling me Uli Udo has to start, my perception of it, it changes. It changes whether he's on the left side or the right side, because if you put him on the right and Derek can put his eyes on him and he sees the guy beating him, you can get rid of the ball. Like, it just changes my perception of the strength of their offensive line. And if you can protect Derek on that left side, I think that things are a lot better. But we have no idea if he's going to be able to do this or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned Trevor Penning, and I completely agree with you. You make no decisions based. You don't say, "No, we got to put Fuaga on the right side because Penning's got the left side." You do not do that at all. But what do you think this means for Trevor Penning? Do you think Trevor Penning? Do you expect during OTAs to see some Trevor Penning on the right side? Do you think this means we're only going to see Trevor Penning with the second team? Do you think this means Fuaga and Penning will trade every practice like we've seen in the past when guys are competing for a job? What does this lead you to guess we're going to see in OTAs?
Like I said this a couple of weeks ago, even. Like, I think they're just going to cross-train all those guys and just figure out how they fit in. And it could be Landon Young at guard. It could be Landon Young at tackle. It could be Uli Udo on either side. It could be Penning at either tackle spot. I don't see Penning in the cards at guard. Now I don't. I don't see it. I will say, like, in the discourse as a whole about this team that's taking place in public, I find it tremendously interesting that, like, the idea of moving Trevor Penning to the inside is like an easy, smart thing to do, but changing a guy from left to right at the same position is the most outrageous thing that anybody could ever do. I find that kind of interesting, the way that conversation's playing out. But I think they're just going to try everybody at a bunch of different positions and see how they fit. And I'm okay with that because I don't believe they have answers. Like, so I think trying to find them, like, there is a process to that. And, you know, one last point on the flip, like, I think if you're comparing this to Zach Baum moving from pass rusher to linebacker, off the ball linebacker, you're making the wrong comparison.
No, you've seen that on Twitter, I assume.
Yeah,
like, I mean, there are a lot of panicked takes on this. Right tackle to left tackle is a much more common. And actually, finish your point, but
Ryan Ramczyk switched.
Ryan Ramczyk played left tackle in college. His entire college career, Ryan Ramczyk was a left tackle. He played right tackle in the NFL. Jari Evans was a left tackle in college. He played right guard in the NFL. So we think of the Andrus Peat couldn't do it example, but there's a lot of good examples in Saints history too.
You spoke on it earlier, and you kind of alluded to it in this last answer, but you talk about putting the best five on the field. The Saints added veteran offensive lineman Lucas Patrick in the mix over the weekend. He's a starter. He has some experience. So with him in the mix now, who are the best five that you think will be on the field?
I don't think it's Lucas Patrick right now. I think he's probably more of a depth player, and just kind of doing like a cursory scouting of him. I think he's probably better as a depth player, but at least you have somebody with experience on the team now if something happens, or if the floor falls out, like you set a floor at least with him. I feel like we did this recently, and my answer is probably going to change. I'm trying to remember who I said, but I mean, I think it's Fuaga at one of the spots. I think Nick Saldiveri, McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and probably Uli Udo. I think it's probably the last one.
Yeah. So first of all, I feel good about the signing of Lucas Patrick. Now, I don't know how good I feel about Lucas Patrick himself as much as I do the idea of him. But it's just a reminder, and Nick did this study last week. Everybody check it out on the website if you haven't, about how offensive line play is probably a little overrated in people's minds around the league. There's a lot of bad offensive line play everywhere. But the Green Bay Packers, who I think everyone agrees is a pretty good team, started Lucas Patrick for 15 games at right guard in 2020. They started him for 13 games in 2021 at center. The Bears last year started him for 15 games, mostly at center. So what is that? 30, 43, 48 starts over the last 4 years. I mean, we keep worrying about how they lost Andrus Peat and they lost James Hurst. I imagine Lucas Patrick can play at an Andrus Peat, James Hurst level. I imagine Oli Udo can play at that level. And if they can't, I imagine there's 5 more Lucas Patricks out there. We've talked about how Dalton Risner is still out there, and he started for a long time. Last year, it was Max Garcia, a guy that they brought in, and they plugged him in, and he started some games. There are experienced veterans out there. So just because the Saints are going to give Penning a chance to start on this team, and they're going to give Nick Saldiveri a chance to start on this team, there are guys like this that could come and kind of stop the bleeding if needed. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think this becomes a battle at left guard between Lucas Patrick and Nick Saldiveri. I think the battle at right tackle will be Oli Udo versus Landon Young. I think the battle at left tackle will probably
Penning.
be and I'm saying more what I'm predicting the two deep to be, Trevor Penning and Taliese Fuaga working out at left tackle. So they've got options all around, none that make you feel totally secure about this team, but enough guys that could do it. And this helps a little bit. I think this helps people sleep at night a little bit. I mean, look at the graphic we have up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. That's a lot of snaps played in the NFL at 3 different positions.
Yeah, that experience is invaluable. But, going back to the rookies and Saturday in minicamp, who else stood out? We got a chance to see Rattler for the first time, see him in a, competitive sense. What stood out about him?
I thought he looked good. I mean, man, that man throws a good football. Like it's just a lot of velocity. Mm-hmm. I mean, the spiral is as tight as any spiral you're going to see. The arm strength is incredible. I mean, I think there's probably just isolate everything, every decision, all that stuff. Isolate it. Like he's probably got a top half of the league arm. I mean, I think his arm talent is that good. I talked to someone who said that he has one of the best arms he's ever scouted. So I mean, I don't even think that's an outrageous statement. Like it is, right. it is an industry.
That's not hyperbole with this guy. I mean, the reason we've written and talked about him so much is we are talking about one of the top recruits in the last 25 years, and not even just recruits. Like after his freshman year at Oklahoma, he was like the Heisman frontrunner because he was so good his freshman year.
He's good. He made good decisions throughout that practice. I don't think he really pushed the ball at all. There was like one throw like 15 yards down the field to close it. It was kind of like a skinny post that he hit. It was a really nice throw to kind of close it out. But he was smart. He got the ball out where it needed to go. His only incompletion was probably a little bit of a misplaced ball, but it got broken up by the defender. I mean, I thought he looked great. I really do. I mean, it's rookie camp against, a lot of guys that are going to be, doing something other than going to the league. But I mean, he looked good out there. And, I don't know that you can really take anything from the positives necessarily from rookie camp on a quarterback, but I think you can take stuff from the negatives, and there really weren't a whole lot of negatives. Right. So I think that was a really good first debut for us with him. He's small.
Talk about that real quick.
He's small. Like he looks small. Like he does. Not like frail. He's not thin.
He's muscular.
Yeah. He's short.
Stature.
Though. Like, he does. He looks short out there. Not like, there's other guys that look shorter out there than him. But like he's definitely not like, he looks at his listed height. I just put it that way.
We're gonna find out what kind of timing and anticipation he has. I mean, it doesn't. Your arm strength doesn't matter unless you use it properly. But just initial impressions from scouting him on tape and watching him now once in person on the practice field. Describe the difference between his strong arm and Jameis Winston's strong arm, because Jameis Winston flicked his wrist and it went 70 yards down the field. We haven't seen Spencer Rattler do that in Saints camp. We've seen him do that in games and stuff like that. But I think immediately people are like, okay, strong arm, but what are you going to do with it? But like similar, different? What's your impression of arm strength or arm talent as it comes to those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar. I mean, you know, strong arm is strong arm, and Jameis had one of the better, still has one of the better arms in the NFL. I say this cautiously and respectfully.
Yeah.
And we've seen one practice, but like looking at the college tape, watching Jameis, you know, I'm not going to die on this take. Like, I'm just saying it. I'm not going to die on this take, but I think the short field accuracy is maybe a little bit better with Rattler just coming out of the gates, like immediately. And that was Jameis's biggest area. Like, you know, but we got to see a lot more.
Yes.
I think we saw
Sir,
12
You see him
passes.
under pressure, under real pressure.
Yeah, not thrown against, you know, there were people out on that field that are going to be at the lumberyard next week. Like, it's just kind of the way, it is. Some of them are going to be selling insurance. Like, that's just kind of, it's just the truth of the situation.
CDL
Some of them will
class
be in
about to be
Canada.
full,
You know what
man.
I mean? Like, I mean, a lot of them aren't going to be, 90% of the guys we saw out there aren't NFL football players. So it's incredibly hard to kind of judge that. You can probably throw with a lot of confidence over the middle when you have really no worry about the guy being able to make a play. But I do think in the college tape, like, you saw a lot of that. And that was one of the things that I really kind of liked about him, was that shorter area of the field stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, look, Jameis has shown that he can stick in the league. He's been a starter. He's achieved a lot. Like, Rattler has a lot to do to even, we're talking about a number 1 pick versus a 5th round pick. So, I mean, there's a lot that Rattler has to do to get on his level to have the career that Jameis has had. But I do think that maybe that short area stuff, I think there's a chance for Spencer to be maybe a little bit better at.
Right. Well, I mean, that was sort of Jameis Winston's fatal flaw. I mean, there's no secret in saying that. It doesn't mean it's something he could never correct if he would have had more time to work the way Sean Payton was working with him before he tore his ACL. But that is something that undermined Jameis Winston, was working in the middle of the field. I talked to, for the story I did on Spencer Rattler a couple weeks ago, I talked to his longtime throwing coach. He's been working with him since he was 12 years old. And I was asking about what makes him special as a quarterback. And the thing he highlighted first and foremost was his touch. And he said, just wait till you can see the way he can drop a ball in over a defender with touch, layering the ball when it needs to be layered, throwing with real soft touch. He can make all the throws, but when you see him lay the ball up with touch, that's the thing. So I'm curious to watch that. I'm curious to watch. I don't know that we've seen deep ball and touch. I mean, that's something Drew Brees did at his peak, and even then he was maximizing his arm strength. So I'm really curious to see if that plays out on the practice field this summer.